Good morning everyone, it's been a really long time since I did a video, and since this is the start of 2020, I thought I'll just do one, right? In this video, we'll do something slightly different. We'll learn how to animate a still image in After Effects. For this exercise, we are using a stock photo, but you can always do the same, using the same techniques and principles and apply it on your painting, as I did for my students' showcase reel. This exercise that we are doing right now, it's an exercise that I did with my class. It was conducted as an in-class demo, but many had issues following the instructions. So I thought I would convert this into a video tutorial so that they can pause and rewind if they encounter any issues. With that said, let's get started. Before we actually move into After Effects, we will need to prep the image in Photoshop first. And by that, I mean separate the elements, the foreground element and the background element, into its own individual image. By the way, you can download the images in the description box below. Okay, first, let us resize the image to be full HD resolution. We will duplicate the layer, the background layer, and go to image size, and set the height to 1080. Okay, once that is done, we would like to extend the width so that it's 1920. We'll go to canvas size, we'll set the anchor point to be the right hand side, and set the width to be 1920. So we notice that there's some empty space, and we need to kind of fill in that space with something. So let us use the rectangular marquee tool and select the region. You don't have to be too precise with that. You can go a little bit more. And after that, click on Edit and Content Aware Fill. This will do a pretty decent job at estimating what needs to be filled on that space based on the surrounding pixels. Photoshop will just sample what's nearby and apply that over there. You can do this, you can repeat this process multiple times using different parameters to kind of fix it, as you can see what I'm doing over here. You can also use the lasso tool if you want to make a more irregular selection. Repeat the process however many times. Over here, I think I'm more or less happy with the end result. And I'm ready to kind of move on to the next step. Next, I will duplicate the layer, and I will select the object selection tool. If you're using an older version of Photoshop, I think it's called the quick selection tool in 2019 and below. Once you have selected the object selection tool, you notice that on the top panel there is a select subject button. Click on it and wait for Photoshop to load, and voila, Photoshop does the work for you. It does a fairly good job at selecting what it thinks is the main subject on the image that you have, which over here would be Ronaldo and the football. So what we want to do is to click on the quick mask button, and what this does is that Photoshop will create a mask based on your selection. Next, while selecting the mask, you want to fix certain areas such as this hole in the ball. I will use the lasso tool and do a selection around that area and fill it with a white color. In general, while in the alpha mask mode, white would show something that's on the layer, while black would remove something on the layer. Next, I will duplicate the layer with the mask, and right now I want to isolate the ball and Ronaldo into their own separate layers. So what I will do is, with the mask still selected, I would select the ball on the top layer and fill it with a black, and on the bottom layer I would select Ronaldo and fill it with a black. Again, while in alpha mask mode, this simply kind of removes the selected region if you fill it with a black. I'll rename the layers just to make it a little bit clearer. Okay, so going back to the extended background layer, we want to do the select subject operation again. And this time what we want to do is to actually remove Ronaldo and the ball from the scene. So after doing the select subject, I just proceed to clean up the selection. You notice that when you do a select subject, it might not fully select the things that you want it to select, meaning the selection area is a little bit smaller. And right now what we want to do is we want to really expand the selection so that we know for sure that the selection covers the subject that we want to select. So what we do is we go to select, modify, and expand. And for now I'll just key in a figure of 15 pixels, and what this does is that it actually expands upon the selection so that the selection area is actually bigger. I zoom in to just check to see if everything is selected, and after that I go ahead and do an edit and content aware fill once again. So as you can see in the preview window, it's pretty clean. I think it does a fairly great job at filling up the areas. With that done, we will export the images into the individual PNG files. Okay, so once that is done, we still need one last step in Photoshop to just remove the empty spaces for the two PNGs with transparency, namely Ronaldo and the ball. So first, let's work on Ronaldo. To select the area that has something, i.e. not transparent, just Ctrl+Click, hold down Ctrl and click on the thumbnail, the layer thumbnail. It will just do a selection around areas that are non-transparent, and click on Image, Crop to remove the transparent pixels, so that this image is just him. And then we will overwrite the save file. We'll do the same for the ball. But I noticed that the ball is kind of cropped off. We will fix this later. So basically what I did was I cropped the ball first, and then I make sure that the canvas is kind of like a square canvas. And then using the lasso tool, or rather using the circle shape tool, I made a selection, a circular selection. And I kind of remove the areas that already has some information. What I really want to do is to select the transparent area to kind of fix the ball to make it round. The first step, I use the content aware fill function again. This time I try to edit the sampling area so that I can have something that kind of looks like what I want. It still looks a bit iffy, and I will try this operation a few more times. See if it works. think the area is too small to be sampled, and I decided to just do a quick paint over of that area with a single solid color. Just a quick fix. Alright, so once that is done, we are ready to import these images into After Effects, so go ahead and do so. Next, we want to create a composition with the background image, so just drag the BG image and drop it into this Make Composition button. And it will create a composition for you. Just make sure that the duration of this composition is 4 seconds. If it's not, you can always go to composition settings and set the duration to be 4 seconds. Okay, once that is done, we will drop in the ball and Ronaldo and kind of reposition them into where they're supposed to be. The first thing we want to do is to animate the ball, and to do so, select the layer with the ball and hit P to bring up the position. And next, we want to click on the stopwatch icon beside the position to create a keyframe on the first frame. Move to the last frame at 4 seconds and shift the ball. This will create a sort of a simple kind of animation and movement on the ball, but currently it looks rather stiff and robotic, so we want to introduce an arc to the trajectory of the ball. To do so, simply zoom in and you will be able to see a spline handle. Click and drag to create kind of like a smooth arc-like motion for the ball. Something like that. Next, you want to introduce some rotation. With the ball layer still selected, click on R to bring up the rotation. Once again, using the same method, create a keyframe on the first frame, move to the last frame, and toggle the rotation values so that we create a subtle kind of rotation as if the ball is floating in mid-air and it's rotating at the same time. If you find that your ball is rotating in a very odd manner, that means that you did not do the transparency removal step in Photoshop earlier. Okay, next we want to animate Ronaldo, and to do so, we will use this function called the puppet pin. You can find the button at the top panel. Simply click on the puppet pin tool and start to assign some joints on him with the layer selected. Start to click on his body and assign some joints. Now this process is very, very similar to 3D rigging in a sense whereby you are actually kind of assigning bone influences on this 2D image. Once you have assigned the joints, you can actually hover your mouse over to each individual joint, click and shift the joint around, and you'll notice that the area around that particular joint would be shifted and influenced by that one joint that you are moving around. To start to record this animation, simply hold down the Ctrl button, click and move the joint to wherever you want it to go. So first I start to animate his shoulders, and you can release the your left mouse button once you're done with the animation. Because there are quite a number of joints that are introduced into this image, I will want to keep the workspace relatively clean. As such, I would tend to just stick to 2 keyframes for each individual joint, one at the start and one at the end. Just like any other keyframes in After Effects, you can still tweak and modify the parameters once the keyframe has been set up. So over here, I can still shift where I want the position of the joint to be at the final frame. So I'll do the same for every single joint. Once again, I am just making sure that it is just 2 keyframes per joint. I don't want the animation to get too out of hand. I just want to keep it simple. So my intent for this animation would be him just, lunging forward to receive the ball as it is flying towards his right boot. Of course, this video is not about animation and animation techniques, but if it helps, you should always act out the action so that you can have a more informed decision. You can make a more informed decision on how the body should move in this case. Okay, I think something simple like this is good enough. For now, I think I want to readjust the ball so that it doesn't fly so close to him. Just move the ball slightly away. Not quite in contact with his boot for now. Something like that, I think is good enough for what we are trying to achieve over here. Just a subtle animation, some slight movement. You can take to your heart's content to make sure that it's perfect. But for now, we'll move on. Next up, we will create a camera. To do so, just go to Layer, New, and Camera. We will use the default 35mm settings. And next, we want to convert the other layers into a 3D layer. To do so, simply check on the 3D layer checkbox. Make sure everything is in 3D. And to view it in 3D, I would switch to a 2 views setup and change one of the view into a custom view one. That way you can kind of see the layers in a 3D view. And what we want is to shift the background layer back into Z space. And you notice that when you shift it back into Z space, it appears smaller and you can see some holes in the active camera. And what you want to do is to scale up the background so that it covers the entire camera. You don't see any empty spaces. The point of doing this is to introduce a fake kind of panoramic effect when we animate the camera much later. But for now, we will not animate the camera. It's just to set it up for something later. As there are some shadows on the background layer, whenever you are shifting the background and scaling it up, just make sure that Ronaldo and the ball it's quite close to the shadow area. Alright, next I will import in the ESPN logo and create some text that would sort of fly in halfway through the animation. So just position the logo to where I want it to be and insert some text that I thought would fit the theme of this particular video. Alright, once your text is ready, I'll do something to kind of highlight the text. Right now it's kind of lost against the background. So the first thing I will do is to create or to add a bevel and emboss kind of effect on the ESPN logo. To do so, just right click on the layer, go to Layer Styles and Bevel and select Bevel and Emboss. Next, I will do the same. I will apply a gradient overlay on the ESPN logo. Layers, right click Layer Styles, Gradient Overlay. And I'll expand the gradient overlay options and set the blend mode to be overlay mode. And then I'll edit the gradient so that it goes from a gray to a white to a gray. This will create kind of like a vignette effect of sorts. Next, I will apply the same for... Alright, before I apply the same for the other text, first I will actually duplicate the ESPN logo, and what I will do is to edit the gradient so that it's a darker color of the original logo. And then I would actually delete the bevel and emboss effect. And I'll shift this duplicated layer below the original layer. Next, I would just lower the scale just slightly so that it kind of looks like the logo is being extruded. It looks more three-dimensional. Next, I would then repeat the same process for the other text. I go to right click on the layer styles, and add a gradient overlay. For the other text, I did not apply the bevel and emboss effect because I thought that it doesn't look as good. For the text, because it's slightly smaller than the logo, I would actually pinch the gradient by shifting that little diamond shape in between the gray and the white so that it's closer to the white. And then I'll do the same. I will duplicate the text layer and change the gradient overlay to a normal blending mode and edit the gradient so that it is darker than the original text layer. And then I'll scale it down. So that it gives off a fake kind of extruded effect on the text. Alright, once you have applied the layer styles to all the text layers, the thing that we want to do next is to group all of them together. To do so, select all of the text layers, right click and click on Precompose. And I'll just name this text. What this does is, if you can compare it to Photoshop, it's kind of like grouping them into a layer group. Next, we can then animate its position so that it flies in from screen right to where it is right now. So using the same method of creating animation, of creating a keyframe, we will do that transition. We probably want it to come in around 1.5 seconds, and then to end that animation at 3 seconds so that the viewer can read it for like 1 second before the video ends. We want to right click on the keyframe and select Easy Ease In to sort of let the text drift in and then slow down to a stop. However, this despite introducing this Easy Ease, it's not functioning as what I want it to be. So I'll click on this graph editor and select the position on the text and click on separate dimensions. This will allow me to affect the movement in the graph editor, and I want to accentuate this graph or this curve over here to look something like this, so that it really has this kind of snappy effect where it flies in and then it slows down to a stop. Next, I will convert this into a 3D layer as well, and I will push it back into Z space. So it looks like it's slightly behind Ronaldo. However, we want to create the effect whereby the text only appears when it's to the left of Ronaldo. To do so, we will create a mask. I will go to layer new and create a new solid layer. The color of the layer of the solid doesn't really matter. And next, I would actually resize the solid so that it takes up only about half of the screen, as you can see over here. Next, I will click on the toggle switches and modes button at the bottom of the software. and select the track matte for the text layer and select the alpha track matte. So basically, you can only see the text layer when it overlaps onto where the black solid was supposed to be. Finally, we will animate the camera to give it kind of like a fake parallax effect. We will do so by keyframing the camera's position and point of interest parameters. Keep the movement to be a little bit subtle, as anything more drastic might shift the background out of the frame, which is something we want to avoid right now. In conclusion, this type of animation is suitable for more subtle movements, and try not to do anything too crazy with it, especially with the puppet pin. If you try to do a more elaborate form of animation, it might look kind of weird. So right now I'm just trying to clean up the animation, make sure that the camera movement is good, try to fix the animation on Ronaldo. I noticed that his left foot is drifting a little bit, and I really want to keep it planted on the same spot. So I cheated by animating his position value so that it looks like he's always, grounded. And with that, I hope you learned a thing or two. I know that I'm talking a little bit fast. The steps are shown a little bit too quickly, but you can always pause and rewind to understand what's going on. If not, you can always reply below and I will try to answer any of your questions. And with that, I hope to see you soon again.